elders, respected scholars. Alhamdulillah, we are in the month of Rabiul Awwal, and the masjid, we saw it fit that instead of our weekly tafsir, we can just have a few reminders of just the seerah, remind ourselves of things we've heard as children and perhaps we haven't heard in 30 years, 40 years. Appreciate the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his Mubarak childhood, and inshallah maybe some other aspects in the next 3-4 weeks. When we hear the seerah, very often what's discussed in the seerah is the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life post-prophethood, essentially 40 and up, where what happened before the age of 40, we don't discuss it as much. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One is we don't have that much information actually prior to the age of 40. Because from the age of 40 till the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, that's when people noticed, right? That's when people recorded things. Now he's a prophet, hence everyone around him is noticing, and that's why a lot of things reached us from that age. And this is one reason why scholars of history and scholars of hadith, prior to the age of 40, they take a lot of what has been reported with a pinch of salt, right? They don't trust a lot of what has been reported because prior to that, he was a normal person amongst them. Yes, he had extraordinary qualities, but still, nevertheless, an average person amongst them. So that's why not a lot of things were mentioned prior to the age of 40. So I feel like maybe at least one or two things we can mention, inshallah, maybe discuss some lessons, especially with raising our children. First and foremost, just during the year the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, Amul Fil, the year of the elephant, right? As we are well aware, the one surah I'm sure everyone here has memorized is Surah Al-Fil, right? The surah of the elephant. Right, and this surah is a direct, you can say, summary of what happened during the year the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, in the year of the elephant. And this year, or this event, was so important for the Arabs that it was, I like using this example, not because it's a good thing, but it's we can understand how important it was. Kind of like a 9/11 for them. For Muslims now, it's like pre-9/11, post-9/11. That's how our lives are. Right? For them, it was like, before Amul Fil and after Amul Fil. Before the year of the elephant, after the year of the elephant. Because it was such an immense event, it was such a catastrophic event, what really happened, where the Quraysh really solidified their power through what happened during the year of the elephant, right? The qissa and the story of the elephant. And just a few things, inshallah, some of the things we can, some points we can draw from this. And after that, I want to discuss, inshallah, Halima radiallahu anha, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's milk mother, right? I don't like the translation foster mother. I don't think that's an accurate translation for what happened, right? The milk kinship, and perhaps even a little bit of fiqh of rada'a or milk kinship, inshallah. So first and foremost, the year of the elephant, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have you not seen what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done with the companions of the elephant, the people of the elephant, right? Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not lay their plans to ruin, right? The word kaid here is very interesting. The word kaid essentially is a plan, but it's like hidden, like a hidden plan, like a conspiracy. It's something behind the scenes, right? Where we know, as we will progress with the story, that this person, he made an open declaration of what he's going to do. But why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention the word kaid? Inshallah, that we'll mention that. What was the hidden aspect, right? The jealousy of the Christians, really. That's the hidden thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making an ishara, an indication for us. Now, what happened during this year? You have Arabia, right? You have what we say current day Saudi Arabia. You have Mecca, you have Medina, you have Jeddah, you have essentially what is called the Hijaz, right? The Arabs in that area and the Arabs in the surrounding areas, because of the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, we know Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and his son Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, they built the Kaaba. This is something that we all know, right? And there were some aspects of his deen that remained amongst the Arabs. Shirk definitely crept in. There were idols in the Kaaba. There was idolatry. There was paganism. There was stones being worshipped. But at the same time, some remnants of the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam remained amongst the Arabs. So the Arabs yearly, prior to even the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hajj was very common amongst the Arabs, right? They would have their yearly Hajj, they would come and they would do the tawaf from the Kaaba, etc. And they would have some of the rituals of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, right? Remember, the Arabs, they believed in Allah, right? It's not an issue of believing, it's what else they believed in that made it problematic, right? They had belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Kaaba was the center for the Arabs. Now in Yemen, there was a king, I'd say more of a governor actually. He was actually under the authority of Najashi. We know Najashi being the Abyssinian Christian who became Muslim ruler that the Sahaba made hijrah towards in the early phases of the Meccan da'wah, in the early phases of the Meccan period where the Sahaba went through a lot of persecution. This is something that we are all aware of. This Najashi, during this Amul Fil, was a completely different person. He's the father of the Najashi that we know. So two different Najashis, right? The Najashi that we know that granted asylum to the Sahaba is different from the Najashi that was around during the Prophet of Allah's birth. It was a father-son relationship. But the same Najashi, and he was also from Abyssinia, obviously, he was an Abyssinian king. Under his rulership in Yemen, right? We know Najashi was a Christian, and Yemen during that time was also Christian. Yemen during that time was also Christian. There was a ruler named Abraha, right? This Abraha, he obviously knew how much reverence the Arabs had for the Kaaba, right? He wanted to essentially build something for his economic power and for his strength in his community so the Arabs can turn to this instead of the Kaaba. This was his plan. So he built a massive, massive, beautiful church. Right? Remember, he was a Christian. Right? He built a massive church and he invited essentially the people around, etc., to come and essentially make this the center of that Arabian area as opposed to the Kaaba. This was what he wanted. This is what Abraha wanted. Now, naturally, the Arabs, they just had it in them. They had extreme reverence for the Kaaba. And this was something, alhamdulillah, they had a lot of love for the Kaaba. One Arab, what he did in response to Abraha, he went inside the church and he number 2 in the church. Right? He took a poop in the church. Naturally, Abraha was very, very upset. Right? His response, and this is something that we should all be very, very careful as well. You know, like something happens, our response is so much worse than that. You know, that's the first lesson, right? If someone, punches you, you don't go and kill them, right? If someone punches you, you don't take them in the private areas, right? Naturally, this is a Quranic principle that when someone does something to you, you treat them back equally, right? Al-mu'aqaba bil-mithl. You do something equally, especially husbands and wives, like, na'udhu billah min dhalik, Allah protect us, like, husband does something, right, this happens unfortunately, husband does something, he upsets the wife, or the wife does something, upsets the husband, what does the opposite do? The crime is so much more severe, husband says something, wife wants to go and commit adultery, na'udhu billah min dhalik. And these things happen, and these stories reach us, right? This is exactly what Abraha did. Look at the crime, and look at what he wants to do. The crime is a man, one jahil, one ignorant man, comes and takes a poop in your church. His response, I'm going to destroy the Kaaba. That's his response. So the first lesson we can take from this is that when something is done to us, either treat it as an equal or you forgive. When you go above and beyond, you'll see it's a sabab, it's a cause of your destruction. And we know this will lead to Abraha's destruction. So Abraha, naturally very upset, what does he say? He said, I am going to destroy the Kaaba. I am going to destroy the Kaaba. Now, we can see from this entire incident as we progress, as Surah Al-Fil mentioned, right? Abraha, he had elephants, right? He was a person who had elephants. There were no elephants at that time in Arabia, right? I'm pretty sure there's no elephants even now, unless they exported from elsewhere. Because of his connection to Najashi and the Habsh and the Northern Africa, he had all these war elephants. And obviously, naturally, the Arabs were very, very scared. Some Arabs in the beginning, they tried stopping Abraha and his army and they lost. They were utterly defeated. Some were imprisoned, some was killed, right? This is one thing we should keep in mind. For those things which are truly, truly, truly honorable to our deen, honorable to Allah, sacrificing ourselves on the path of Allah or the path to protect those things is truly beloved, right? This is something when I go through this, I just think about Palestine. Because their protection of the Bayt al-Maqdis is very similar to this, right? Some people say, Allah forbid, this is crazy, just heard that someone alim mentioned this. He says, what the Palestinians are doing, it's not a religious cause. This was the claim. He said, this is not a religious cause. It's just a nationalistic cause. It's something out of nationality and just protecting themselves. It's not religious. Wallahi, it's religious. Protecting Baytul Maqdis, protecting a monument, protecting something muqaddas and sacred to Allah Azza wa Jal, how can anything of that nature not be religious, right? Now, obviously, there's a lot more. This is not the point of the topic, but the point I'm trying to drive is that how could this not be religious? And even then, protecting your life there's nothing more religious than that. If someone comes and tries to rob you, right, and Allah forbid you pass away in that defense of yourself, inshallah you die a shaheed. How is that not something religious, right? So when some people make certain claims, right, what deep understanding do they have? And you find that some of our people who aren't even aliens making such comments, right? So the cause of Palestine is a religious cause, right? And this is very similar to what happened, right? So some of them, they see Abraha, they want to stop Abraha, and Abraha utterly annihilates them, right? Now, who was around at the Kaaba at this time? Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. He was around at this time, right? Now, whether Abdul Muttalib died a Muslim or not, right? That some scholars have different opinion. It's not really for us to judge, right? We know at the time shirk was there, and we know at the time the da'wah of Islam was not there, because the Prophet of Allah himself was not there. Now, whether we can consider him Muslim for other reasons, that's a whole different theological question that this is not the time to go into. But one thing we can say is that he believed in Allah, he made dua to Allah on this occasion, and we will see certain things. So Abdul Muttalib was there, and you can say he was one of the leaders of the Haram at the time. And we know his daughter-in-law, Amina, is pregnant with the Prophet ﷺ during this time. Because the Prophet was born about 2 months after this incident, right? About 60 days after Amul Fil. So Abdul Muttalib, at the same time, Abdul Muttalib, he goes and he visits the Abraha, right? And he tells Abraha, because Abraha owes him about 200 camels. Right? Abraha owes him 200 camels. So Abdul Muttalib goes to Abraha and says, look, can I have my camels back? So Abraha is like, look, I just made a declaration, I'm going to destroy your Kaaba. Why are you asking me about your camels right now? Don't you have other things to worry about? He says, the moment you make that declaration, that's between you and Allah. Allah is going to take care of it, right? You took my camels, that's between you and me, right? I want my camels back, right? And Abraha, actually out of respect, he gave him the camels back, right? But this was Abdul Muttalib's yaqeen and certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah will protect his home. Allah will protect his home, right? What happened, we all know what happened. Abraha came, he's outside the haram essentially, right? He's facing the elephants towards the Kaaba, and the elephants are kneeling. They're whipping and lashing, it's like, what's going on? The elephants are not moving forward, right? Every time he puts them towards Yemen, the elephants are ready to go. Pointing towards the haram, the elephants are not, right? This was what happened. This was truly miraculous that these elephants, that we know, the animal kingdom is a very, very special thing, right? I always recommend for Muslims, try to go to the zoo often, try to go to the safari often. The animal kingdom, wallahi, is a very, very special thing. Every now and then, certain things that we see in certain videos, we see, wallahi, just my iman increases. I think there was one video I saw, it was, there were 3 different creatures in a farm, and one creature from outside came and attacked one of them. And the other 2 creatures, I believe it was a sheep being attacked, and there was a chicken and a cat that came to the protection. All 3 of them protecting each other, right? From this external thing. If you saw that video, it was such a beautiful video. And there are so many videos like this. The animal kingdom, truly, there are certain things we just don't know about it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly opening about the animal kingdom. So we should keep our eyes open, especially with animals. So this elephant, these animals are all ibad of Allah. This elephant, eventually, what happened, the elephants are going back to Yemen, right? And at this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends his special army against animals, right? Allah sends Tayran Ababil, a whole flock of birds, and they pelt them, right, with those stone plates, right? Hijarat min Sijil, and those things completely lay them to utter waste. And Abraha eventually, he somehow doesn't pass away from this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him somewhat alive. And right before he reaches home, right? That's the worst, right? You think you're there, that's when he passed away, right? That's when Abraha passed away. This is the famous Qissatul Fil. This is a summary. We can go into a lot more details on this, but this is a summary of Qissatul Fil, right? This is the year the Prophet of Allah was born in, and this is essentially a summary of Suratul Fil that we have all memorized, right? The first thing that we can understand from this is how important the Kaaba is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That this is the protection. Allah himself did not use any human beings, right? Abdul Muttalib and them, when they were coming, they all ran away. They all ran away to the mountain paths, right? And Allah protected the Kaaba. So as believers, we have to have ultimate reverence for the Kaaba. If we ever see a picture of the Kaaba, does it turn us? Wallahi, I have seen people, if they see a picture of the Kaaba, they start crying right away. What honor and reverence do we have for the Kaaba? Do we try to have some money? There are 2 types of vacations for Umrah, right? Some people, Umrah is a pure vacation. For them, it's for their women to go shopping in the malls and just go and relax. Other people, they go to Umrah because they need it. When are we going to be of the second category? that we take the barakat and the anwarat of the Kaaba, right? That Umrah is not a vacation. That every now and then I go because for my spiritual needs, where we know that's where all the anwarat, the major anwarat, is from spreading in the Kaaba and spreading all over the world, right? That second part. Are we saving some money for that? You know, when we hear Umrah vacations, you find a lot of people criticizing because Umrah is just a vacation now, right? And I agree to a certain degree. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but obviously we should change our intentions. That Umrah is not a vacation. It's not really a place for honeymoon, etc. Right? We should move away from that. But at the same time, if we can afford it, we should try to go for Umrah. We should, for the second reason, for the anwarat and the barakat and the rahmat and the khayrat that are there. It's a place. This is the main place in Surah Al-Fil. This is how much reverence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the people had. That Allah protected the Kaaba. And for the Arabs, it was the most ultimate thing. Right? The Quraysh, all the Arabs are talking about the Quraysh at the time. They are the Ahlullah. They are the people of Allah. They didn't even fight and Allah defended them. They didn't even fight, Allah defended them with birds, etc. So this solidified the Qurayshi power. And we know one is protecting the Kaaba in this incident. Who else was protected during this incident? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You think Abraha, again, what word did I say? Alam yaj'al kaydahum. Kayd is a hidden plan. Something hidden. Right? Makhfi. Right? Something hidden. Abraha openly declared he's going to destroy the Kaaba. That means there were certain things behind the scenes. Right? It wasn't just, I'm going to destroy the Kaaba out of revenge because of this one Bedouin Arab who pooped in my church. No. It's most likely because he wanted to take over that land. Now, if a sultan came, the da'wah of the Prophet would have been that much more difficult. Amina would have been perhaps enslaved. Abdul Muttalib would have been enslaved. Abu Talib would have been enslaved. Look at all these things behind the scenes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected that area from. Alam yaj'al kaydahum. Did Allah not ruin their hidden plans? And what else was hidden? The ulama mentioned under this. The jealousy the Christians will always have with Muslims. Abraha was a Christian. He was jealous. Right? Muslim here in the sense of those who have at least some honor and respect for those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes. Obviously they weren't Muslim per se, but jealousy of those things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept for His ibad. The jealousy of Abraha, the jealousy of the Nasara, the jealousy of the Christians, and we even see it now. There are certain Christians that are like, the Muslims are doing it, we should have it as well. Where it should be the other way. The Muslims are doing it, perhaps they're on the haqq, I should change to them. Right? I should be with them. But no, let's also do the same things, etc. Right? There's a certain jealousy you'll find when you speak amongst the Christians as well. What we have is wallahi what they want. What we have for protecting against LGBTQ and having true monotheism and true lillahiyat, what we have is what they want. And through their jealousy, where it should manifest in awe and honor and acceptance and adoption, it manifests in dhulm against the Muslims. Right? This is alam yaj'al kaydahum. The same jealousy was found in Abraha, and the same jealousy we see it now, with the way the Christians are dealing with us. It's jealousy, pure jealousy. May Allah protect us from jealousy. Because what jealousy can do, it can ruin lives. It can ruin lives in so many ways. We know amongst ourselves where jealousy can go. Right? We hear the stories all the time, you know? Two sisters or two cousins, you know, they both are cousins. One gets married, the other one doesn't. What does that one family do? They commit black magic. Right? They do something like this. Right? They start spreading lies. Right? Just recently, I'm dealing with a case, right? I'm dealing with a case. Just like this, you know? Girl gets married is engaged to a guy. That guy, he's extremely jealous that this is happening. He completely makes up false stories about this girl, about her honor, and that her marriage broke off. Right? Now, people's lives are ruined because of jealousy. Hasad. Right after this, at the end of the surah, right? We're asking Allah for protection from the jealousy. Jealousy is one of the worst things. We know the jealousy of the Yahud, this is also jealousy of the Christians. So this is essentially Amul Fil, Qissatul Fil, the story of the elephant. This is a summary. And there are a lot of things we can discuss elsewhere, but this is a summary of it. And we know the Prophet of Allah was born a few days after, right? Some say different numbers, but we know he was born Amul Fil and about 60 days after, right? According to one report I saw in some of the Seerah works. Now we know the Prophet of Allah was born to Amina. Right? Whether we say radiallahu anha or not, I told you it's a difference of opinion, right? I'm not going to give a position here. But with regards to Amina, Abdullah, and Abdul Muttalib, right? But a large group of ulama do believe that they died believers. That they died believers because the da'wah has not reached them. And if the da'wah has not reached them, then Allah will not take them to task. This is how certain ulama look at it, and the other ulama say otherwise, right? Now, Amina, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ was born, right? There was no father, right? She was taking care of him. Now, I just want to discuss Halima, and inshallah, I just want to conclude. One thing the Arabs would do, and this is something very special for us, most of the brothers here, I see our parents, or inshallah will be parents soon, right? The Arabs in that area, they did something very unique. We won't obviously do the same thing, but it's something we should keep in mind when we're having children, right? Because it's truly unfortunate what we're doing. So, their culture of that time was that we want our children, especially city folk. So city is Mecca, and the outside, the Badia, essentially the suburbs, right? You can say the suburbs of Mecca, right? The Arabs would send their children to the Badia, to the suburbs, right? First and foremost, right? So they can develop some sort of culture with the people there. Second, they can develop their language. They can develop their language. The people in the Badia, especially Banu Sa'd, especially the tribe of Banu Sa'd, they had the most fasih lugha. They were the most eloquent and most properly spoken Arabs in that area. So they would love their children to go to them and from a young age pick up that. This is where we get the emphasis some of our parents make a lot on the mother language, etc., etc., etc. I'm not saying whether we should do it or not, but there is benefit, right? If you feel like your child can learn Arabic, Bangla, Urdu, Tamil, whatever language, right? Then teach them. It's never harmful to know a language. Knowledge is power, right? It's knowledge is power. Sometimes we, out of just the most weakest reasons, we just want to speak English all the time for our children. Where if we give them our home language or our mother language, they're going to learn English outside, inshallah ta'ala. Why not give them that extra language, right? So when they travel the world, they can talk to more people. They can give da'wah. There are a lot of benefits to this, right? So this is something we should keep in mind with our mother language, right? So the Arabs of that time, they really want to develop the language. So they would send them with the tribe Banu Sa'd, right? And to develop the culture. Point number 3, one reason why they would do this is from a young age, right? They want their children to get some freshness, some fresh air essentially, right? It's good for the tarbiyah, right? Obviously, we all know how congested and problematic city life can be, right? And obviously, we're living to a certain degree in this lifestyle, but at the very least, from a young age, what things are we considering? We can't do the same thing they're doing, but we should have this worry that from a young age, what can we do to help our children to be better in their adulthood, right? One is the language. 2, from a young age, are we just giving them an iPad? That's all, right? Is that all we're considering doing? I see parents right now, like, they get so happy. Look, my child's 3 can play with an iPad and iPhone, and my 50-year-old dad can't. I'm like, that's nothing to be proud of. Why are you happy that your 3-year-old can do these things, right? There must be other things that your 3-year-olds can do. There are kids that are 2 years old that know long surahs of the Quran. Why can't we give them that? So at a young age, the same way they want to develop their children, see what things we can do from age 1, 2, 3, 4, where we can give them such habits which will help them in the real world. They'll learn how to use an iPad and stuff like that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing from a young age to get addicted to those things, right? I know I think, what age they start taking swimming classes, stuff like that. Like very young now, right? Those are good things. Those are sunnah things. Teach your child how to swim. These are the things that we should be, focusing our children on, getting them to become better adults, instead of giving these things, just shoving technology in their face, and then we start crying later. My kid, now he needs glasses. No one in my family is wearing glasses, now my child is wearing glasses. Just last week someone told me this. He's like, you name like 20 family members, no one wears glasses, but his son's wearing glasses. And why? Because the doctor said, from a young age, he just had his face glued onto the phone and glued onto the screen. Right? That wasn't a comment against glasses wearing people, but the point is, I don't think people who wear glasses want to wear glasses. It's just part of our, what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's just, that's just how it is. It's not a comment against that, but we don't want that in the sense that makes life slightly more difficult, right? It's something I think we can accept, right? Not trying to attack the glasses wearers, right? So that point, so this is what the Arabs would do, right? So now Banu Sa'd came. Right? So Banu Sa'd, the tribe, inshallah, I'll conclude very soon. Right? Banu Sa'd, the tribe came. So they would come and they would take children and they would raise them. Literally, strangers would raise them. It's kind of like a daycare system. But that daycare system really developed their qualities, right? Especially their language, and you kind of trust them. Right? In those areas, they had a very special trust. So the tribe of Banu Sa'd, or the tribe of Sa'd came. Right? And they're essentially coming and they take the big children, they go back and they raise the children. Right? 1 is breastfeeding, obviously, and 2, they develop the language, etc. One point I want to mention, obviously, is Halima as-Sa'diyah. Right? Halima as-Sa'diyah, she was the one that was chosen by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to take the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at this time. Her name is Halima as-Sa'diyah. The Arabs would laugh at this, right? But the non-Arabs, this is something we should not laugh about because it's unfortunate, right? I always mention this, but especially Bangladeshi people. I'm from Bangladesh, by the way, right? We have to be very careful with what names we give our children, right? The names we give, not necessarily bad, but it's not a name. A very common name in Bengali culture is Sa'diya. You know what Sa'diya means? It just means you're part of the tribe of Sa'd. It just means you are part of the tribe of Sa'd. So all these Bengali girls are named Sa'diya, right? And it just means that they're part of the tribe of Sa'd. That's not a proper name because Halima Sa'diya. And no one ever told them that, name your daughters Halima, not Sa'diya, So this is just one point I just want to mention, that Sa'diya is not a name, right? It's just an attribution to a tribe. It's Halima as-Sa'diya, meaning Halima who is part of Banu Sa'd. Halima who is from the tribe of Sa'd. That's all Sa'diya means, right? It's like if I add next to our names, so and so New Rochelle, right? It's just adding ya at the end shows nisba. It shows attribution to a certain area, right? For example, right? That's what they would do. Now us, we look at this and we just think it's a name. It's not necessarily a name, and it's funny for certain people. Like if you tell an outer person my name is a Sa'diya, they might laugh at you because it just means you're part of the tribe of Sa'd, and you're not actually part of the tribe of Sa'd, right? So Banu Sa'd came. Now Halima was very, very, very. She was in a very difficult situation. Halima radiallahu anha, right? She converted to Islam. We can say radiallahu anha for her especially. It was a time of drought. Right? Very difficult time, right? I don't know if anyone here ever experienced a drought. I was in a drought in South Africa, I think 17, 18. Like, I saw that lifestyle. It's not easy. I'm talking about you're doing tayammum and stuff like that. I went to a hotel. Imagine the hotel is telling you, it was a nice hotel too. The hotel is telling you, right, only at these times you can use the water, right? So I experienced a drought. It's not pleasant at all. Now imagine their droughts. So it's a time of drought, right? Her breasts were dry. Every night she's saying, literally, she's describing this. Every night, me and my husband, our child, there's nothing I can do for my child. Our child is crying out of hunger, and we can't go to sleep because of this. This is one thing that I recently experienced as well. For those new parents, this is one struggle that many people don't expose, but it is a struggle, right? Mothers have this struggle, my child is not taking my milk, right? Even though the mother has full milk, right? So these are struggles that one thing we can perhaps take recourse to is Halima radiallahu anha. Because we know what happens soon after. That there might be some difficulty. Inna ma'al usri yusra. With difficulty is ease. Halima's breasts are dry. Her mule damaged. Her camel, no milk. Her sheep, whenever they go, there's nothing to graze. She's in a tight situation. Banu Sa'd is in a tight situation. She has the worst camel. She has the worst transport. They're all coming to Mecca. They want to take the babies. She got there, everyone has already taken a baby. There's only one child left, and his name was Muhammad. There was one child left, right? She sees everyone got one, right? She doesn't want to take Muhammad, and why did everyone skip Muhammad? It's because naturally his father's not alive. They want this. Father's alive, we might get some nice things. Father's not there, what can a grandfather do? What can a single mother do? Allah Akbar. What can a single mother do? Muhammad was left. Just to emphasize, who is this Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Halima radiallahu anha, she sees the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Now, her intention at this occasion wasn't particularly sincere, right? That's not dramatized, right? She's everyone had a child, might as well take someone, right? Might as well take someone back. And she took Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? It wasn't out of some natural love or anything like that. It was because, look, everyone else got a kid. Let me not be left alone. Let me take a kid myself. So she took the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And she sees the change right away, right? One lesson for all of us. Bring the Prophet in your life. Bring the Sunnah into your life. Bring the Salawat into your life. Bring Deen into your life. If not now, soon you will see the Deen. You will see the Barakat. You will see the Rahmat. You will see the floods. The good floods, you will see the rains. No more drought in your life, inshallah ta'ala. Bring the Prophet, bring the Sunnah, inshallah. Slowly but surely, right? Let's start following on the Prophet of Allah Sunnah. We all have an idea what the Sunnahs are. We know which things are lacking into our life. Let's get onto the path. It's not just praying, it's praying the way he prayed, right? People always coming, it's is it true, that the Prophet liked honey? Is it true that he liked sweet things, You know what my response is, and I learned this from one of my teachers. It's true, the Prophet did like honey, he did like sweet things. Staying hungry was also sunnah. how many days he would be hungry. Staying away from meat. He couldn't have, just normal bread. How many days they would go, no fire lit in their house. You don't think being hungry is a sunnah as well? Study the difficulties of the Prophet of Allah's life. This is real seerah, not just is honey part of deen or not, You'll find even people's fridges, they'll say honey is sunnah, I'm not speaking against that and condemning that. It's when our focus is only on the sweet things and the bells and whistles and rainbows of life, where real deen was qurbani and sacrifice. Jitni qurbani, itni meherbani. The more sacrifice, the more meherbani and rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we learn from this. You bring the Prophet, you will see the change, inshallah. If not now, later. Right away she saw the change. Her breasts are full. Her child is finally full after so long. And the Prophet of Allah is full. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Their camel, I've never had camel milk, maybe inshallah we'll try. Their camel, suddenly, milk. She can eat, drink, her husband can drink. The whole family is sorted. They're going back to their place. They're going back to the suburbs. Her mule, her transport was the slowest because of certain injuries. Suddenly the fastest. Suddenly the fastest. Allah. They get back to Banu Sa'd. They get back to the area, right? They had sheep. Her sheep goes to certain areas to graze. It comes back full. All the people, they're like, what's going on? Is this the same Halima? Is this Halima's same animals? They send their sheep to the same areas those sheep went to. They don't come back full. What's going on? This is the miraculous nature from young, the Prophet of Allah, that inna lahu sha'na, that he will have a certain status. From young, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showing us his status. With the changes to Halima radiallahu anha's life. She's like, what's going on? She's speaking to her husband, we got something different. And he's like, this is a special soul. So naturally, after 2 years are up, she breastfed him. Just one thing I just want to mention for the fiqh of it, right? I'm going to conclude very soon, inshallah. When someone when you drink the milk of a woman that's not your mother, that woman in Sharia becomes like your mother, right? That woman in Sharia becomes like your mother. In English, we will say a milk mother, right? Foster mother is not a good transition. A milk mother, right? And even now, this milk kinship it's practiced and something we can establish, right? I normally recommend it amongst cousins. Why? Because we know in Islam we can marry our cousins. And also it's a bit difficult in the beginning. They grow up like brothers and sisters, but then certain weird things happen. You're not sure if you want to have the proper segregation or not, and all those weird things. The easiest thing is from a young age, try to establish a milk kinship. You don't have to worry about that, right? Because you can't marry your milk sister. It's haram. She's like your sister, right? So if a boy and a girl drink from the same person, they are like brother and sister. This is called milk kinship in Arabic, radar, right? This is, the Quran speaks about this, obviously, and all the fuqaha discuss this, right? Now, I'm not here to promote this or not, but this is something we can consider if we have such concerns, right? Milk kinship. I know families in New York that have done it, right? Some of the newer brothers here will know there's a Hafiz Mahdi. He used to teach here, right? He's fully established. Like him and his cousins, everyone, him and his siblings, all their kids are milk siblings, right? All his kids are milk siblings with their cousins, right? So people are doing it in New York, right? I always tell my mom, why didn't you do it with us? She's like, if we knew, we would have done it. If we knew, we would have done it. I'm like, okay, so inshallah we can educate. Because, me personally, it's not really comedy, but with my aunts for example, my uncle's wives and stuff like that, and some of my female cousins, naturally I don't really interact more than necessary. And sometimes it does get a bit difficult, right? So I always joking to my mom, you should have done this. And she said, if we knew. Right? So this is something, inshallah, we all know now. If it ever gets to that point, right? As long as a child before the age of 2 years, they drink a woman's milk, that woman will be considered that child's milk mother. That woman's kids will be considered that child's milk siblings. And that woman's husband will be that child's milk father. That child's milk father, right? This is by the way, that's fiqh, but it came, So the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, she weaned him at 2 years. And she obviously saw all the barakat in those 2 years. Allah. Now, when you have something, you don't really want to give it away, right? So she goes back, after 2 years, normally you give back to their mothers, right? She tells Amina, I don't really trust Makkah, I don't trust the weather here, I don't trust the sicknesses here, I don't trust the plague here. She's trying to get, and Amina obviously accepted. She's like, fine, you can keep Muhammad a bit longer, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? So Halima radiallahu anha kept Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam for about 2 more years, according to some reports. 2 more years. Then in those 2 years, obviously she saw a lot of things. Again, barakat and khairat, right? And I'm going to conclude the final thing that she saw, and this scared her, and she gave Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam back. What the Prophet of Allah would prepare, essentially, the first preparation of the Prophet of Allah for prophethood. Because not anyone can be a prophet. Some of the brothers remember the lecture I gave a few weeks ago about the satanic verses, right? Shaitan cannot have influence on the Prophet of Allah. If Shaitan has influence on the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the wahi, you can't trust the wahi. You can't trust anything because he's a potential influencer, or is it someone who is potentially influenced by Shaitan. So from this young age, we need something to do, or we need something to start off this mechanism to make sure that he won't get influenced. And we know what happened at the age of 4. The children are they're playing around, they're in the fields, they're grazing, they're doing what they gotta do, right? The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has his milk brother with him. Suddenly, right? One report mentions just 1 angel, other reports mention 2 angels, and they came in the form of human beings. They grabbed the Prophet of Allah, they literally stabbed open. It's the first ever heart surgery, right? Open heart surgery, right? That's what they say. This is the first ever open heart surgery. They grabbed the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they put him down, they open his chest, they take his heart, and they take 1 piece of that, the alaqa, right? They take 1 piece and they cleanse it in a gold basin, and they cleanse it, right? And Jibreel, in one report comes to Sahih Muslim, he says that, هَذَا حَذْبُ الشَّيْطَانِ مِنْكَ, right? This is essentially what Shaitan could have got from you, and he cleansed that from you. And this started the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam isma. Our aqidah as the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe the prophets are infallible, that the prophets do not commit major sins. This started the isma. This started that infallibility, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the prophets before them, they cannot be influenced by Shaitan. This was cleansed from that point, right? And from that point, you can even see in his own lifestyle that he's not a normal 4, 5, 6-year-old. He's almost like an adult, because that just part of the satanic influence is being playful. It's just, chilling around. From that point, the Prophet of Allah became very serious, right? You can see he's not a normal 4-year-old, right? This is one reason why, you can see he didn't suffer from what others would suffer, as a yatim, as an orphan, and other things like that, So this was all part of that. He was cleansed, and the angels came. And Halima radiallahu anha, she was informed by her son, and they were very scared. They thought it was a jinn, right? They thought it was a jinn. Some of us have the same fears. Anything happens, it was a jinn, it was another, it's this and that, black magic, this ta'weed, we want everything, Again, the rule there is, first exhaust natural causes before you jump to supernatural. Right? Summary. First, what natural explanation can we give? Okay, no natural explanation, then perhaps something supernatural. And that's normal. There are times someone is sick. He's so sick, but if you go to doctors, they can't find it. Then when that person goes to some really legit ulama, and they say, no, someone committed sihr, someone committed black magic. That's okay. But for us, we jump straight to these things. And naturally, Halima and her husband, they were scared, they're like, what's going on, etc. And they returned the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam back to Amina. And soon after, the Prophet of Allah lost his beloved mother as well. Then soon after, he lost his beloved grandfather as well. And then Abu Talib. And inshallah, from there we can continue next week, inshallah. It's just, one thing is that many of us have heard a lot of these things. A lot of us have heard the entire seerah. But, just to hear it again and over again, just what the Prophet of Allah told us, wallahi, it's very refreshing, it's very uplifting. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again bring salawat into our life, bring the sunnah into our life, bring love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we see his, naturally, if anyone comes to us right now and swears to the Prophet of Allah, I can guarantee, if not all of us, but we would want to fight at that moment, right? And that's good. But when the Prophet's deen is also getting harmed, we should be worried as well. That should affect our hearts as well. Because that would affect him more. If someone swore the Prophet, he wouldn't care as much as someone disobeyed Allah. This is what the Prophet's sunnah is. May Allah bless you.